let's get the analysis from Alex Deane, who was former Chief of Staff to David Cameron, and he's also a Conservative commentator. Alex, thank you very much indeed for joining us in the studio.
Thank you.
I'll ask your reaction, seeing as you've worked for the man, David Cameron, now Lord Cameron, and he will now be in the Cabinet as Foreign Secretary.
Well, there are very few people, I think, who could do a foreign affairs brief from a, drop-down, start, now, go, in the way that he's been put in. He knows a great deal about the foreign affairs brief. He's plainly extraordinarily experienced. My time with him was a very long time ago, but, I've watched his progress in politics. I thought that one thing to bear in mind about David Cameron is never lost an election. So, if you are as far behind in the polls as the Conservative Party is, as Chris Hope was setting out, having a winner around you is no bad thing. There is, interestingly, though, one of the other people I think who's very good at foreign affairs is James Cleverly, who's just had to make way, because it's clear, obviously, that David Cameron wasn't going to do another job. This was the only one that he was going to go back to government to do. And it's also clear this was in no kind of grand plan, Emily Pitt, because only a month ago David Cameron was having a go at the government over HS2.
Yeah.
Clearly, if this return was on the agenda, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I think he's actually said, Lord Cameron, I must call him now, that Sunak is a strong and capable Prime Minister, showing exemplary leadership at this difficult time.
Well, see, I agree with his position about supporting the PM, but on the other hand, whilst I can approve of the person who's come in to replace somebody, I can lament the manner of the departure of the person that's gone. And this is not the first time for me, because whilst I thought that Alex Chalk was an extraordinarily well-qualified Lord Chancellor, remarkably successful career at the bar, understands the legal environment backwards, I thought it was terrible that Dominic Raab got defenestrated the way that he did. Equally, whilst I think David Cameron is extremely well qualified to be Foreign Secretary, perhaps better than any other person on the pitch, which is why you've wound up with somebody who's not an MP being appointed. I really don't like the way Suella Braverman's been forced out of office. You can think more than one thing at once.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because Ian Duncan-Smith has come out today to register his disapproval of David Cameron being given this position.
Yeah.
He says he's too close to China.
And he will be one of several people who hold that kind of perspective. This is the awkward thing that happens when people don't think they're coming back to government, and they go off and get themselves other work, sometimes lucrative work, sometimes work that touches on the edges of politics, in the way that Cameron and many other people after politics have done. And the China Research Group includes a number of members of Parliament, loyal, die-hard Conservatives who have been formally sanctioned by the Chinese government. So whilst it doesn't mean that Cameron can't serve as Foreign Secretary, it certainly means I think he's going to have to clarify very quickly what his position on China is. It's not just the activity after office that's going to concern people. It's the fact that during the so-called golden age of the Britain-China relationship, David Cameron and George Osborne actively led an effort to get much closer to China, and that feels like a very long time ago now.
And also, Alex, just on reaction from within the Conservative Party and party members to David Cameron coming back into government, a lot of people still remember that he left very quickly, didn't he, after the Brexit vote didn't go his way. Can he be forgiven for that by the party membership?
Well, yeah, A, yes. B, we're going to wind up...
Do you think he can be forgiven?
I absolutely do. I think people in my party will look back and remember that we had years of good government from a stable, sensible leadership of which David Cameron was the head. I also think, furthermore, I mean, I'm great as a Brexiteer, I'm grateful we had the referendum, and there aren't many other Prime Ministers who might have given it to us. Didn't get the outcome he wanted, got the outcome I wanted. But the third thing, I think, is that if we carry on down this path, we will wind up with huge amounts of very well-qualified people thrown onto the scrap heap of politics in their 50s, who in other environments or in our own past would have gone on to serve effectively for another generation. Having older statesmen around to be Foreign Secretary, around to be a safe pair of hands, take on challenging briefs, that's a good thing in politics. And people who've got that kind of lifetime of experience in the House of Commons, or indeed the Lords now, they are few and far between. Utilising them is sensible.
It's not the first time it's happened, has it?
No, Alec Douglas-Hume did it for Ted Heath, and then Lord Carrington did it for Margaret Thatcher until the Falklands.
It's not unprecedented, but I just wonder, for other MPs, like, I don't know, say Tom Tugendhat, for instance, seen as, up-and-coming politician, a potential Foreign Secretary.
Sure.
Today, they might be thinking, this is actually really unfair.
They will be cheesed off.
We're serving MPs.
But part of politics, just as part of business or life, is someone saying, there's nothing wrong with you, I've just found somebody better, right? And that may not be a message somebody likes, but that's the way it is. The more formal difficulty is that Cameron won't be able to appear for questions in the Commons. And when that happens, what you get the number two in the Foreign Office, who is an MP, has a kind of an inflated role, and they take questions on their department's behalf.
And that's
what happened that's what happened under Carrington and under Douglas Hume.
So he won't have to debate the shadow Foreign Secretary then in the House of Commons.
I mean, they might debate outside it, but they won't be debating in Parliament. And one of the things I think is interesting about that, I think that's part of what is getting to the Ian Duncan Smith and co group of people who have been formally sanctioned by China. Not only do I have a concern about it, I cannot bring it to the House and ask you about it at the dispatch box.
So how can David Cameron, Lord Cameron, be held to account as Foreign Secretary?
Well, he will, of course.
He cannot face David Lammy.
He will answer questions in the Lords, and just as if right now you've got ministers in the Lords, or indeed members of the Lords who want to ask questions of ministers in the Commons, there's a process of relaying your question within your party to be asked on your side.
Could this have been pre-planned? Because we actually have seen quite a lot more of David Cameron in the media, doing media interviews that he hadn't been doing for years, if I'm right, if I remember correctly. He has been far more visible in the past few months.
Emily, I love a spot of conspiracy, not cock-up, but I can tell you now, if this was on the agenda in any way, you wouldn't have had the HS2 beef. You wouldn't have had James Cleverly saying last month, effectively, please don't move me from the Foreign Secretary role. Right? If this was in any way on the agenda, people would not have done it. And furthermore, the Conservative Party, like almost all organisations, is basically incapable of preventing leaks. If this was in the works, we would have heard about it.
If only we knew, when we saw the lineup at the Cenotaph yesterday, the former Prime Ministers standing together, Suella Braverman standing, if only we knew then what we know now.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love the idea.
Only 24 hours ago.
I love the idea Rishi Sunak is standing there in the 2-minute silence and looks to his side and thinks, hang on a minute.
just very quickly, while I've got you, Suella Braverman, your reaction to her being sacked.
I'm sad about it. I thought she was speaking for millions of people in this country. I don't think she said anything that's wrong in the Times. I think it was overblown. And once you let the Labour Party get a scalp like this, they don't stop. They move on and try and get another one. I thought that she had expressed herself forcibly, but with a perfect right to do so. I also think that it's a difficult situation for a Home Secretary who doesn't directly control what the police do on operational matters and has, in London's effective police and crime commissioner, in Sadiq Khan, someone who is absolutely opposed to her agenda. And when you've got someone that's implacably against you in the end in the police and crime commissioner role, and you've got a chief constable who would rather go off and do podcasts and interviews about how wrong you are rather than discussing things with you, what are you supposed to do? I thought doing a timed interview was rather nicer than sacking him. So, in the end, I thought it was a completely reasonable thing for the Home Secretary to do.
I have been away the past few days, and I did reread her article in the Times, and I didn't find it as shocking as some of the commentary seemed to suggest. But there you go. I'm sure everyone has a different opinion on that one.